Hi, I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Well, today I want to talk again about my world of astrology. And this is kind of an interesting thing that happened with me that I think you'll enjoy. And it's about writing. And here's the thing, actually, this is so funny that I have written 14 books to date, and even more because there's a lot of them that I kind of had in pamphlet form and I didn't have published. So, I can easily say I've written 25 books, but this is so interesting because I remember in 4th grade, a teacher telling me I was a horrible writer. And I wrote like this fantasy of something, I can't even remember, it was like Mary Poppins or Julie Andrews being on a ship and being in a crate. I don't know, it was a nutty story, but she told me it was terrible. My mother told me it was wonderful, but I listened to that teacher and I've never ever thought I was a good writer. Although actually, when you get into high school or junior high and you have a teacher that's a really good teacher and they inspire you to do something, then they pull, the creative stuff out of you. And I remember I did write a lot of really pretty good papers. But anyway, I never thought I was a good writer. And as you know, if you've been following my world of astrology, I never learned how to type. So anything that I did write was handwritten. I had to get my poor son Christian to type it out when I was writing those articles. But finally, I started using the computer and typing, although I still henpeck, and I have to look at the keyboard. But I've gotten pretty fast at it since I've written 14 books to this date. But I can't write where I don't look at the keyboard. Okay, so anyway, it's turned out that I actually started my website. I believe it was around 1998. And this was, the internet and everything was pretty new in its new phase in the late 90s. And it was in 1999 that I started writing my newsletters. So I would write a monthly newsletter as I do today. And here is something I want you to know. I have never missed a month of my newsletter coming out monthly since 1999. Through all of the ups and downs in my life and traveling and craziness and flying on the airplane, I never missed a month of my newsletter. And mind you, I'm sitting here thinking I'm a horrible writer. But I did it anyway. And way back in the beginning, half the time I would sit down every month and I had these deadlines. It had to come out every month before the beginning of the next month, right? Had to get it out. And sometimes with life being full, I was raising a family, I was flying, and at one point I was even running a restaurant, and at another point I was doing readings all at the same time. Oh my God. Yes, I did it all. So I had to write this newsletter. I remember even, and that magazine article that I was writing too for the predictions, for the signs. I sometimes had to write all this when I was traveling on a trip, and after getting up, 3 o'clock in the morning to do my hair and makeup and stuff and be on the plane, I was dead tired. I remember taking those no-dose gross pills to stay up to write that article because I could never, ever miss a month. And to this day, I have never, ever missed a month. It really is. You have to have organizational ability to do this. And I will say this, I have exalted Saturn. Thank you, God, for my exalted Saturn in Libra. It's in my 5th house. Did you know that the 5th house is the house of writing books? The 3rd house is the house of writing, but the 5th house is actually the house of writing books. The 5th house is the house of creativity, and don't forget the 5th house is the 3rd house from the 3rd house. See, 3rd, 4th, 5th. Therefore, it deals with writing as well. And in my 5th house, I do have the Sun, Saturn, Mercury, and Neptune. The Sun rules the 3rd and sits in my 5th. 3rd house writing, 5th house. But my Sun is debilitated, so therefore I thought I was a terrible writer, and it does sit with Saturn. But moving on, I did this newsletter, and one day we had this gift store before we had the restaurant. We made the building into a gift store, and I continued to do my readings there at the Galactic Center, but we also sold gifts. This was after my parents were gone, so we would buy all these beautiful things from the World Trade Center and sell them there. It didn't really take off, but it was kind of fun and got my mind off the fact that my parents had just died. So a lady came in the gift store, and she said in front of my husband, which I was so proud, because here I'm thinking, this grueling task of doing my newsletter every month, making sure it always came out. This woman says, "Oh, I get your newsletter. I live for your newsletter." I thought, oh my God, my husband heard it. And he, of course, made a snide crack about it, but it was such a compliment, because here I was thinking, why am I doing this? So that gave me the courage to continue my newsletter. And if you don't get my newsletter right now, here's what it is. I predict, I go into before the basically everything that I do in my monthly YouTubes for the whole month is that I write everything out in the newsletter first. So basically, I'll give you the lowdown. On Saturdays, I do my writing. On Sundays, I usually do my filming. But always, I will write my newsletter for the following month, usually on a Saturday, because I'm doing readings all week. But on a Saturday, I will sit and I will contemplate and look at the charts of where all the planets are for that month and write that article for the month. Then the next day when I'm filming, I regurgitate everything that I just wrote. So I even have have it written down, and I have things underlined that I don't want to forget to say in my monthly YouTube, where I go over everything that's going to be happening for the month. But I have to first write it. Because when you write it, you organize your thoughts, you get them out on paper, then you have an outline of what you're going to talk about. Because when I do my readings for the month, when I do my YouTube video for the month, I sit there with what I wrote the day before, and it's fresh in my mind, so I just kind of know what I'm going to talk about. I don't pretty much, unless I'm trying to remember a date, glance at that paper. But I can't do a script. I have to just talk. And generally, I talk the whole way through. I don't need a lot of editing because I know what I want to say. So that's how I write my newsletter. But I thought you might find it very interesting that I've never missed since 1999 to get it out every single month. Come high or hell, high water, whatever that saying is, I did it. So I have to say I'm pretty proud of myself for doing that. But another thing I wanted to say was one night, this is kind of a very interesting event. I don't know what to make of it, but this is what happened. One time I was trying to think about what to write for my newsletter, and nothing was coming. This was a long time ago, before I, had this pattern of how I've kind of gotten this pattern on how I do it now. But I was sitting there thinking, what am I going to write about? And nothing was coming to mind. I was dead tired. It was back in the days when I was still flying and I was exhausted all the time. You did a 3-day trip and you come home. You think, oh, you got 4 days off. You're exhausted. And by the time you start feeling good again from the flying, then you got to go back for another 3-day trip. That's how flying. Anyone that's ever done that job knows what I'm talking about. There's something about the altitude and no sleep and people and all of that you have to deal with for 3 full days. Anyway, couldn't figure out what to write about. So what came to me is, if you start writing, write about anything that comes to your mind, then something will kick in and the writing will be like automatic, and you'll start writing what you need to write. And basically that is kind of what I did. And I usually tell people that I feel like from their charts are supposed to be writers, with the 3rd house and the 5th house planets. I tell them to do exactly what I did. I say, get up early in the morning and start writing. And what I want you to do is to write anything that comes to mind, pose a question, and whatever comes to mind, you start writing it. Okay, so I did this, and I started writing about Kennedy when he came to Dallas. And what I wrote about was Kennedy coming to Dallas, him walking down the steps and walking into the crowd and walking right up to my mother and my sisters. And I wrote about this in explicit detail. And I didn't know why I was writing it. But I finished the whole thing about, and this really, this is what I was writing about. Kennedy walking down the plane to the crowds. And anyway, so then I get an email from my son Preston. And he says, go here, click on this link. This is right after I finished writing this whole scenario about Kennedy and my mother and sisters. And I didn't know why I was writing it. It wasn't what I was going to put in my newsletter. And I don't think I finished my newsletter that night, because he sends me this email. Click on this link and go to the 3rd minute. I click on the link and go to the 3rd minute. It was exactly what I just wrote. Kennedy walking down the stairs of the plane at Love Field into the crowd and walking up to my mother and 2 sisters, and my sister Carol jumping up and down right after she shook his hand. This is a video. That was a video that was like on the History Channel. And he got the link and sent it to me. And here I just wrote this exact description down, and he sends me that link minutes later. I don't know what to make of that. Why that happened. The synchronicity of that was outrageous. This is no coincidence. But I just want you to know that we are so divinely connected, and the psychic ability, the information, the spirit world, all of this is so real. That's all I want you to know from everything that I'm discussing and talking about right now. And the fact that what it takes to be successful is persistence, diligence, never giving up, And boy, I wanted to give up many times with that newsletter. And even with my YouTube channel. Heaven forbid, I've had it for 9 years. So, you know, people think you're successful overnight. Think again. There's many blood, sweat, and tears that went into anything that we've done. And yeah, I might have a lot of subscribers on YouTube, but it's taken me a long time to get that. So I just want to say, for you writers, get up in the morning and start writing. Write whatever comes to mind. You never know why, but there's a meaning behind it. And I think that, in a sense, is probably what automatic writing is called. Some people think when you do automatic writing that something just takes over your hand and something's moving your hand and making you write. No, what automatic writing is when you tune in to your spirit and let whatever comes out flow through you, through your writing. You can answer great questions this way. You can actually pose the question, why is this happening, whatever it may be that you're in question about? Why is this happening right now? And then start writing anything that comes to your mind. And what will happen is something will kick in and you'll start channeling and you will get the information you need. This will come through the writing, but this is how you do it. You just start writing. And half of it will be nonsense at first, but it's almost like you're turning the ignition on an engine. And by the time it turns over, that's where the channeling kicks in and the flow's going, and you start writing what needs to be said, and it's coming through you. And then I guarantee you also, when you go back and you read what you wrote, you'll think, I don't know who wrote that, but it wasn't me. It's amazing. So try this technique, but I just can't believe what happened with my newsletter that evening. It was weird. And it's incredible how we can tune in. So with that, I think I'll close. I hope you enjoyed this section on writing, automatic writing, channeling, and how never give up when you have something that you want to do. You just have to persevere and not give up, and you will be successful. That's a promise. So with that, I thank you for listening.